Now let us see in C++ classes, which is one of the technicalities of C++. In this we are going to talk about classes, their implementation and interfaces, what are constructors and member functions, and in the next discussion we will see these two, enumerations and operator overloading. So what are classes? A class in C++ directly represents a concept in a program. So if you think of it as a separate entity, it is plausible that it could be a class of or an object of a class. For example, vector, matrix, input stream, string, FFT, valve controller, and all those, they can be a class. A class which is generally user defined, it is called as user defined type, that specifies how objects of a type can be created and used. So class is a framework through which you can make various objects. In C++, a class is the basic building block for the programs, especially large programs, and quite useful for smaller ones also. And this class concept was actually introduced initially in Simula 67. Then we have members and member access. In a class, it is defined like this: class, this is a keyword, this is a class name of your choice, and inside this you will have data members which stores information or which are going to store information, and then function members, they do certain things using these information, or even not using this information, they can do certain things. For example, you have a class X, the public, this is an access modifier, and inside this you have two members, actually one member, this is a function. So this function is using this data member, so we can call it as a function member. And this class name, if class name is written outside a class, and we can just declare an object or an object from this class, so variable will become a type of X. And how to get this M and MF, this member and member function, from this variable, you can use easily the dot operator. So variable dot M, you can assign a value 7 to this, and even by variable dot function name, by passing some parameters, you can assign these values or you can use it. Again, a class is a user defined type. This is the keyword, this is the class name. This is public member, means all those stuff or thing which will be below public, a public access modifier, access specifier, will be public members, that's the interface to the users, and the accessibility under this public is for all. While if you consider private, there are three access specifier basically: public, private, and protected in classes. Private members, that is the implementation detail. You try to put your implementation detail inside private, and in public, these can be interfaced to the users because it is accessible to user, and the stuff you don't want user to know or to keep abstracted or hidden, you can give it inside your private. In this also you can have some function type of data. You might have heard about struct, and C language guys, they know struct. What was struct? Struct was actually, you can say, the C minus minus or class minus minus, you can say, a step before our class. So class members are private by default. In this, everything is private. If you do not specify public or protected, it will automatically be private. which means this is equivalent to this. And once you call it x, this x is a class name, and you have made an object. If you do something like this, there will be an error. While a structure in a class where members are public. So structure is also a class, a type of class, but it does not contain, it cannot contain the function. A structure is just like a class without functions, you can say. In structure, all the members are public by default. In this, these two are equivalent, means structure or class, you can write a public access specifier in class and you can say that this is equivalent to struct, because in struct all the members are already by default public. Structs are primarily used for data structures where the members can take any value. So we'll be using struct a lot because struct is very important for various data structure. For example, we have a structure struct is a keyword, date is the structure name. Inside this we have three integers ydm for year, for month and for date. And you have made a variable, date variable called my birthday, and you have assigned my birthday dot y, means 12 to year, 30 to month, and then 50 to the actually this should be here. So that is why this is a trouble. So later in the problem we will have some trouble, but no, right now for understanding you can provide any value, but this is not logical right now. And if simple date is there with few helper functions, we can also have some helper functions just for your convenience, because you have defined a structure. Now you have also a date variable. How can you have a helper functions which will help this? Like init day, means you want to initialize these day, means check for the valid date. You have seen some invalid stuff, so you want to check the valid date and initialize. You can very well see that this ymd are local, and this date is nothing but the reference of the structure. And for add day, again the structure reference, because you have to pass this structure object, you can say, or structure variable into this init day and add day. And this does what? It may increase the date by n days or some other task. So when you call this init day, my birthday is nothing but the structure variable you have made, and 12/30/1950. So this will be an error because no day 1950 in month 30. This is how you check. You have checked for valid date. And also for you can guarantee initialization with constructor, so you can very well use the constructor inside a struct. But what in this C++ you can also initialize, like in this you have integer, struct date, integer, year, month, day, and date is like this. So constructor checks for valid date and initialize. And also void add day, it means it increase the day by n days. You have a variable called date my birthday, and you have initialized 12/30/1950. So there will be an error because this is not valid date, but this is okay. This is year, so 1950 will be okay. And once you call this function add day using my day, you can easily insert the value and also assign a value. And in this class date, what we have done, this was structure, and I just suggested that in C language we cannot have function inside a struct, but here the things have changed. Now you can have these constructor inside your structure. Also you can have a function as well. Then for classes, you can have a class date. In this you can specify, you can easily specify data values, and these will be private by default, and in this you can have a structure which is having the same name as the class, and YMD, this constructor check for the valid date and initialize, and we can also have a function increase the day by n, and some getter functions, get functions, like if you call month it will return m, d and y for day and year. So you can very well make a class variable called my birthday, and then you can call constructor at this very point. This is calling of the constructor and making a object also. And you can also just by my birthday dot month, because this is a getter function, it will read the values, and you can also provide the value. But here the problem is this m is a private, so there will be error in this line. So the notion of valid date, as we suggested that we want to know the classes here, so valid date is an important special case of idea of valid value. So we try to design our types so that values are guaranteed to be valid. So we have to check the validity all the time. And the rule for what constitutes a valid value is called an invariant. Again, a rule for what constitutes a valid value is called an invariant. And the invariant for date, that a date must represent a date in the past, present, or future, is unusually hard to state precisely like this. So we can't think of good variant. We are probably dealing with plain data. If so, try to use struct. Why to use struct? Why to use class? When to use class? And again, if you can't think of a good invariant, use structure and try hard to think of good invariants for your classes. That saves you from buggy code. For example, in this is a simple date. Some people prefer implementation details in the later segment. So we have date here and a public access specifier. For this you have a constructor. This check for a valid date and initialize. This is a add day function. It increase the date by n. Again, this month you can have any implementation for this. But here private values y, m, d are private. You have made it private, and once you can call this date using scope resolution vector. And how to do this? You can just write the name of the class, double colon and date, and this date is not returning anything because this is actually a constructor. So you can easily call the constructor using this, because the name will be of class, passing these values, and you can very well initialize at the beginning. And you can also call this add date using this date. This is the definition. As you see, there are various things which are changing here, and for this particular case, what is happening? This is again a date class. You have defined public for date. This is a constructor function and your month. And this is private. So if you want this function int month, so there will be a problem. Return m. This is implementation, because what you have to do, you have to use this double colon and write the class name here. That means you have to write the date here. Okay. So this month will be seen as a global function now. This will not be a function inside. So it cannot access the members. It cannot use this m, because m is already inside class. If it has to use, it has to do the way I said. But here, what is the problem in date double colon season? Because once you are making a function, you have not even declared it, so there will be error. The season has to be inside this. And what we can do in case of an invalid date, because we have already seen how to do it, we can just have an exception to be used as an exception. We can make a class called invalid, and we can use it as an exception. Other things you already know, we have already done. These are the new things. Means class invalid one, and bool is valid, this ymd. Now you can just make this is a function which is a constructor actually. So it initializes the member, and inside this you can very well check if is valid. This is what you're using. throw invalid. It will throw this class. So it will check for validity. So you can have a class inside a class, and you can use this bool variables to check or verify the values. So why to bother with this public and private distinction? Why not make everything public? That is to provide a clean interface. To maintain an invariant, as I just suggested, only a fixed set of functions can access the data, and for debugging, to allow change of representation. That is why you require public private, and you will see protected few lectures after. Okay, thank you so much. Take care.